Thanks to John Kosher there for the voices. We welcome Diane James and Miranda back. Good to see you. Anything you've heard from David Cameron change your mind?
Well, I was always going to vote Remain. You know,
even if he hadn't brought back
if he hadn't brought anything.
Some Belgian chocolates.
Yes, some Belgian chocolates would have been lovely, actually. The milk tray man. But actually, you know, this referendum that we're going to have is on much more than the 4 points that the Prime Minister's decided to focus on over the last 6 months and for the next 2 weeks as well. So, actually, I think we should all sort of lift our sights from, you know, the minutiae.
Well, that may happen
bit.
as the settlement fades into the background and the wider issue. I assume your mind hasn't been changed to leave.
No, not in the least. I mean, he asked for nothing. He's got less than nothing, if that's possible. If you read some of the foreign newspapers, the European newspapers, as I did this morning, even they are ridiculing what he's actually now putting to the British people. So it's pretty messy.
Is it, I mean, for your side of the argument, Alan, you want to stay in, is the settlement helpful? I mean, can you use it to try to encourage people to say we should stay in? I mean, he's got the ever closer union that's been sidelined. It doesn't mean, in Britain's case, political integration. There are some generalised things.
It's helpful for the Prime Minister to be saying this is a good deal and recommending it. It sways some Labour support. He is the Prime Minister. He's the elected Prime Minister. I basically agree with Miranda, but just to speak up for the Prime Minister for a moment, I've heard people banging on about ever closer union over and over again for the last, you know, God knows when.
It's the phrase from the Treaty of Rome.
Macron's government put in ever closer union of the peoples of Britain, consistent with the principle of subsidiarity. No one mentions that. But so, you know, in that sense, in the context of the package he went out to get, actually, if they're your big issues, I don't know why people like Diana aren't applauding that. They're not my big issues, and I agree with Miranda. Let's get on and have the... Yeah, but if, you know...
There's nothing you could have brought back.
If the issue was... No, that's true. But given that people have been banging on about sovereignty, banging on about this little kind of preamble to the protocol of ever closer union, he's gone and done something about that.
Yes,
so
but, you know,
Alan... rocked your boat...
With all due respect,
give him some credit.
You know, what we do know is that immigration tops the polls in terms of people's concerns. We also had a Prime Minister who consistently and constantly pledged to do something about immigration. And he hasn't actually dealt with that at all.
I'm only defending him so far.
Yeah.
No, I understand. Let me hear what Michael's got to say.
I think you've even already said, you know, that this is not an issue about benefits, it's an issue about wages.
Let's hear from Michael. Is the settlement helpful in terms of the substance, or is it only helpful in that it clears the ground and allows the Prime Minister to get in to argue for Britain to stay in?
It gives the Prime Minister a clear run to make his argument for the next few weeks without any Tories in the Cabinet being able to say anything different. So that's quite important. It seems that he's done enough possibly to scare off Boris Johnson and Theresa May, who might otherwise have come out against it. It looks as though they feel that the tide of events is moving away from them. So it's significant in that respect.
Well, can I just...
But I absolutely agree with Miranda that the settlement really has nothing to do with the case. I mean, you should be voting on whether you want to be in the European Union or not. And, you know, the Leave case should be principally about where we want decisions to be made. Do we want them to be made by British Parliament, which is accountable to us, or not?
You say it may have scared off Theresa May. Not yet totally clear it's scared off Boris Johnson, who I'm sure is watching the polls very carefully to make a big issue of principle. To make a big issue of principle on this.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more about that.
Tomorrow's poll in the Times, a YouGov poll, has Leave 45%, Remain 36%. Take out the don't knows, and it's 56-44. Maybe one of the big beasts who's quite Eurosceptic, if there are 3 or 4 or 5 polls like that, they may be tempted to pitch in with the Out campaign.
Well, you know, from my point of view, let's hope that is the case.
Are you an outer?
Yes, I'm an outer, of course. Well, I say of course. I mean, I didn't want there to be a referendum, but I'm very worried about the consequences of voting to remain, because it's exactly the opposite of what David Cameron says. I mean, we will have fired our bolt. We will have no more influence on trying to stop the things that we don't want to happen, because the European Union will know that we can never again threaten to leave. They needn't worry anymore about what Britain thinks, because we, you know, that that
But
horse would have bolted.
But we'd still have the 2011 European Referendum Act, which allows us to vote on any further movement of powers from London to Brussels.
Yes, although such referendums were promised again and again after treaty change, and none was ever held.
But don't you think that one of the things that has happened over the last few years is that, you know, all the talk we used to have from previous British Prime Ministers about how Britain should be at the heart of Europe, that era has gone.
Sure.
Everyone...
Well, the Eurozone's killed that.
Absolutely, but so everyone now has really accepted the idea that Britain and the British people want a sort of associate membership, or something that is different from this idea of a kind of crusading central role in the EU.